Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out a very interesting figure. This figure was actually requested for review by M. Guerrero here on the channel. This is a figure that I acquired in a box of figures from DJenkins.com a little ways back, and this is the Dinosaurs in the Wild Dakotaraptor. Now, I don't know a whole lot about the Dinosaurs in the Wild experience. Like, I believe it was some form of a show, maybe a live show. I'm not really too sure. I never really knew anything about it. I think at the time it was like based in the United Kingdom, so it's not like it was something that I personally had an opportunity to see here in the United States. And again, I really didn't know much about it outside of the fact that it produced a few very cool figures, and one of which is the one that we see here, the Dakotaraptor. Now, one of the most striking aspects of this, aside from the fact that it is in fact a Dakotaraptor, we really don't get very many figures of that species, is the size. It is very, very impressive in the size department. It's also extremely solid, so it's got some significant weight to it for sure. And again, it is a pretty cool figure featuring some articulation and a raptor species we just don't see very often. So let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at this right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Dakotaraptor, you can see it looks pretty cool. We have some decent looking skin texture here, but it's extremely fine, almost muted a little bit in the face. It is present, you can see it, it just doesn't quite pop. Compared to, a lot of the figures that we see nowadays, it's not quite as impressive. You can see the nostrils are sculpted out. They're also highlighted with a darker tone. There's also a few splotches of black here in the front of the snout on both the upper and lower jaw. I don't know why it's a little sloppy as far as that paintwork goes, but it certainly is. We do have an articulated jaw, though it doesn't have much when it comes to mobility. So when you try to close the mouth, that's as far closed as you can get it. So it doesn't really close, honestly, at all. It is always open. It does open a little bit further, which you can see, but that's about as far open as it goes. So not really a whole lot going on as far as that goes. You can see the teeth are sculpted out pretty decently. They look like they're all sculpted individually, and they're okay as far as the paintwork goes. It's definitely a little sloppy, but not too bad. The teeth on the lower jaw also look fairly decent. You can see the tongue is sculpted out. Everything has a nice pinkish tone for the inside of the mouth. Even has a little bit of like a slight satin kind of shine going on in there as far as the tongue and the pink paintwork. As you lead up here, you can see the eyes are pretty darn big. They're a little sloppy when it comes to the paintwork, but they do actually feature quite a few different tones of color. We've got like a white, then a green, then a white spot, I guess, for eye shine. I don't really think that would be the pupil. It's just a huge white spot, but then you can also see a little black mixed in there as well. Definitely not my first choice, I think, as far as paintwork goes. This side looks a lot better. You can see that the actual white spot that sort of gives you that eye shine is much more reasonable on this side compared to what we saw on the other side, because if you look at the white spot over here, it's huge, and then you look over here, definitely looks a lot better on this side. We also have actually the tag here for the dinosaur. You can see Dinosaurs in the Wild. You can also see Dakotaraptor plastic toy, and then here on the back you've got information on the figure as well as the company responsible for this, which is IVS Group. They are the ones that made this figure. I'm going to take the tag off just so it's not in the way while we are, of course, reviewing this. As you move up into the top of the head, you've got some feathering picking up. You can see some nice white feathers. We've also got a little area of like some orangish feathers up there. And then as you move down here, you can see we've got a black for the feathering and a lighter tone, kind of like a white here, running along the side of the face. There are definitely some, scuffs and stuff on mine as you move through. You will see a little bit of damage here and there on the figure, but the feather detail is pretty decent looking, but again, still a little bit muted. Nothing on this figure I would say would be like award-winning as far as the actual vibrancy of the detail or just how impressive the amount of detail is. There's not really a whole lot going on as far as that goes. You can also see that the lower jaw sports a small area of the feathers right here that it's unpainted. But as you move down, you can continue to see the feathers look okay. Leading down into the arm, you've got some very dark black feathering here as you lead down. You've also got a little bit of white leading along, kind of like striping through the plumage here on the arms. And the feathers, again, look pretty decent. It just doesn't have super impressive fine detail. But from afar, you know, it does look pretty nice. And we do also have articulation in the arms, which can go forward and back. A little bit stiff, kind of seems to stop right about there. And could go back about that far. You can also see the fingers are sculpted pretty nicely. Again, kind of lacking when it comes to the skin detail, but painted with a very interesting lighter tone of color right there. You can also see the nails sport a gray and then a white for the tips. And what's interesting is, even though this is a toy, those nails look genuinely sharp, and they feel genuinely sharp. Like, I could definitely see some kids getting injured with this figure because of how sharp the nails look and feel. But it is nice to see that they put forth a little bit of effort as far as that goes, you know, adding variation of color to the nails. You can also see that white striping here moves along the underside of the feathers on the arm as well. And then, of course, as you lead back, we continue to have that white tone for the lower part, the black tone for the upper part. And then leading back into the thigh, you can see there are just 2 white stripes randomly back here. I'm not really sure why or what reason there is for that being there, but it is present. You can see the thigh looks very muscular. You've also got the calf as you move down. We transition from the black to a white briefly, and then back to the black. And then we have a very different tone of color compared to what we have for the hands. You can see we have more of like a bluish gray for the feet as you lead down. You've got some scoots running down the toes, and of course the same paintwork, you know, as what we had seen, where it kind of has like that grayish tone, and then the white for the tips kind of like halfway through. Interesting color choices for the nails. You can also again see that the nails have that genuine sharp look and feel to them, which helps to at least give it a more high quality model-like look, but it is still a toy. Again, I'm surprised that it has such sharp nails. We do also have articulation in the legs, but it's very, very minor articulation. That's really about it. We could probably get it back about that far. That's about as far forward as we can get when it comes to the hip articulation. When you come down here, you've got 2 joints for like the ankle area, which helps to give you a little bit more mobility for the figure. Again, you can move those areas back and forth, forward and back, and that's really about it. The ankle right here seems to be the most articulated area, I would say, of the figure. We do also have dew claws. And then as you move up here, again, the feather detail continues to look pretty decent. We have this white tone on the underside. Even looks like we've got like dry brushing of another white tone over top of it somehow. And then again, the black moving along the top. And then you've got more articulation out here, but it's kind of weird articulation. You can see it can go forward and down, or actually I should say up and down, not forward and back, but up and down. And that's really about it when it comes to that area of articulation. Kind of strange, but as you lead out, we do have some very nice looking plumage as you lead out into the tail, definitely giving the Dakotaraptor a very flashy look. You can see we have this white tone kind of running along the outer edge with the black running along the center. You can see the tail itself, and then of course all of the feathers leading off of it. And then we of course also have pretty much the same thing for the underside, but kind of reversed, where we have like the white on the outer edge up here, we have the black on the outer edge down here, and then the white for the underside, again, where we have the black on the upper side. Not really too much that you're going to see different on one side compared to the other, because of course the figure is, you know, in a neutral pose. It's up to you to sort of display it and position it, but definitely a really cool figure. Obviously, it's not going to be the greatest articulated raptor you're going to see, but for what it is, it's pretty fun. One of the biggest downsides, I think, for this figure and its articulation, though, is the fact that the ankle joints are kind of loose. So when you stand the figure, often the ankles just kind of crumble. And you can see, if we didn't have these nice feathers on the arms, now it fell over, but if we didn't have these nice feathers on the arms, man, it doesn't want to stand anymore because I moved that arm. There we go. If we didn't have the nice feathers on the arms, I feel like this figure probably wouldn't stand for me at all. I have seen some other people get theirs into positions where it could stand, like almost like this, where you can kind of have it standing up. I don't know if I can do that with mine. I mean, I definitely could if I position the tail. Nope, fell over again. So as you can see, the standing aspect of the figure, the balance of the figure isn't so great, and the joints are definitely a little bit loose when it comes to the ankles at the very least. But as far as the size goes, we're going to have to move it pretty far forward and hope that it now doesn't fall over again. For a length from the snout to the tail, you are looking at about 18.5 inches or around 47 centimeters. For a height to the top of the tail in the spot that it's in, about 6.25 inches or around 16 centimeters. But of course, you could lift the tail up higher if you choose to. And then for the head in the position that's in, just a hair under 5 inches or right around 12.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Dakotaraptor from the Dinosaurs in the Wild series, and you can see that it's got a pretty darn good size to it. You know, if the measurement wasn't enough to show you that, this visual right here definitely should, because you can see that Dakotaraptor drastically outsizes everything here with it. Now, this Dakotaraptor is another one of those figures where I don't really have a whole lot to compare with it. You can see here a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus next to it, but when it comes to Dakotaraptor, as I mentioned, it is a severely overlooked species, so I don't really have very many to compare with this. You know, like I've got the SP Art Projects version and I have a Schleich version, but none of those are figures that would compare well with this one. Especially the SP Art Projects version is in like a very cool dynamic pose. The Schleich version is very small, similar in size to the Mattel Raptor there, so it's definitely a tricky one to find comparisons to go with it. We have a few more randoms with the Safari LTDU Tyrannus, Schleich Diabloceratops, and Collect A Deluxe Dimetrodon. And then when it comes to a size comparison with, you know, your standard Beasts of the Mesozoic Raptor series released in the 1/6 scale versions, you can see here the Achiroraptor next to the Dakotaraptor, and obviously this Dakotaraptor is a lot larger than your standard Beasts of the Mesozoic Raptor series release. So this is another very cool figure, honestly one that I've been looking for years and was really excited to be able to acquire again through DeJenkins.com, which I don't think they have any currently, but you never know. It's always worth checking because Dean from DeJenkins is consistently updating his website, always putting new stock on there, always finding, you know, older figures that he can list on there for sale. I honestly cannot recommend DeJenkins enough. If you have never been on their website, you absolutely need to go check their site out, because not only do they stock a lot of the current modern day releases, they also have tons of older stock, which, you know, it's always stuff that you have a hard time finding otherwise. So make sure you check DeJenkins out. But again, when it comes to this figure, I was so over the moon excited to get my hands on it, because this is a line that at one point I had nothing of. I had always seen people posting images and stuff of the figures, and I was always really quite drawn to them, but because they are very hard to find, the price tags were always a bit higher than I was interested in paying. So when DeJenkins finally got one of these, I was definitely all for grabbing it, and I'm very happy to have it here. You know, it is a really nice looking figure. It may not be the most, you know, highly detailed version of a dinosaur figure, but it is at least pretty decently detailed, and the fact that it is a Dakotaraptor, especially such a nice looking one, is a major plus, because as I said, it's a species we really don't see very often get figures. So to have a really cool one like this is definitely something that I was psyched about. And of course, the fact that it sports articulation is really fun. I'm always a big fan of articulated dinosaurs. This one has some okay articulation. It just doesn't have a whole lot when it comes to the mobility aspect of that articulation. You know, it's pretty limited overall. Like the jaw is severely limited, the legs are severely limited, and the tail just has awkward articulation. The arms are pretty decent though, but overall, the articulation is a fun addition, but it's not anything that's groundbreaking. The paintwork is pretty nice for it, though. I will give them that. Nice and smooth transitions. And even though there's a little sloppiness here and there, for the most part, I think the paintwork looks quite nice. Also, it's a pretty cool looking paint scheme in general. Definitely something I could see being the color of this species. So overall, it's definitely not something that's going to blow your mind unless you're really, really impressed by large figures, because it's definitely quite large. But it is still a pretty cool figure, definitely worth searching out if you are interested. So I will try to find a link to include in the description, though it's probably going to be a little bit pricey. Again, I'll try to find the cheapest one possible to include down there if somebody else grabs it. Just check eBay, somewhere like that. You know, you might be able to find one fairly easily, I think, for the most part. They're just usually a little pricier. So make sure you check that link. Let me know in the comments section what you guys think of this. And of course, like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.